Hi and welcome to another video. My name is Cara and this is my September wrap up. So I was going through a bit of a low-key reading slump in September, as in reading slump for me. I still read probably what most people would consider a lot of books. I'm home at a weird time of day and my cat is having the time of her life, being the most irritating cat in existence. Trixie, stop it. So although I read probably what seems to a lot of people like quite a large number of books, for me, I was taking longer to read things. I was less interested. I was busy, which didn't help. So other things were just taking a priority. And I just didn't feel on my game for reading during the month of September. So I ended up with, I DNF'd 2 books. And I fully read 17 things, but plenty of those were graphic novels, short stories, and other shorter forms of work. Now she's attacking the other cat, so maybe she'll leave us alone for a minute. So the first thing that I read in the month of September, I actually had started in August, and that is Jacobi by William Ritter. This is the first in a series that follows, we follow Abigail Rook and Jacobi, and Abigail's kind of like the female Watson to Jacobi, who is like a paranormal version of Sherlock Holmes. I personally really enjoyed this, though it seems like forever ago that I read it, so my memory is a bit shaky, but I had a fun time reading this. It was short. I don't think it's anything absolutely spellbinding spectacular, but I'm a sucker for the Sherlock Holmes like dynamic, and I really enjoyed it in that regard. I thought it was really fun. I also really enjoyed the way that the supernatural elements were interwoven into this. I thought it was just clever without being like too pretentious. I would definitely recommend this series if you're a fan of Sherlock Holmes, and not just one form, like you've enjoyed multiple forms of the Sherlock Holmes story. And if you're a fan of paranormal, but not the like romancy paranormal. Why does it love my lamp? So it's currently focusing on my lamp that apparently it thinks is a face. So then I read a graphic novel. I read volumes 1 and 2 of The Backstages. This is a graphic novel series following these bunch of kids that are they're like the backstage crew of some productions, like at a high school, of like the high school's theatre group, but it's a magical, it's kind of taking a play on the like on stage magic happens, like that transformation from a rehearsal space into something magical, and they have portals in their backstage to weird magical lands where things go weird, and it was so fun. It's got great representation. There are trans characters, characters of a lot of different body shapes, types, color, skin tones, like races, and a lot of different stuff. I think this is really fun. There's a boys' school and a girls' school, but there's, I believe, trans characters at both schools, so there's that to consider, which I really enjoyed. And it's just fun. As someone who's not really been a stage person, but who dates an actor person, like an amateur actor type, I had a great fun of time in this. Like, I love delving into like the backstage world of theatre. It's just so fun. So I had a great time reading these. Then I read a couple of short stories and mini novellas. So I read The Ascent to Godhood by Ji Yang. This is the 4th novel or novella in the Tensor series, which is a silk punk novella series. And they all kind of stand alone. They all kind of have interesting formats too. This one's in a like telling the story to someone at the pub kind of vibe, whereas the last one was in letter format, and they all kind of vary a little bit, and they follow different characters but dealing with the same political structure and world, if that makes sense. I really enjoyed this. This was a bit of a flashback and I thought it was incredibly well done, and I really liked seeing the bit of plot that we saw in this, and I can't wait to read more from this series. I really hope it like keeps going. It better not be finishing anytime soon. It is a tall novella, and I have a feeling like Wayward Children, they keep making them unless someone decides to stop, but I don't know. The next novella I read was This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Matar and Max Gladstone. This is a it's a novella, but it's not that short. It's like just under 200 pages, and it's I'd say a female romance through time. They're essentially, we follow Red and Blue, and they are putting... Trixie, stop it. So we follow Red and Blue, who are both agents on different sides of this time war. The world building is pretty complicated, and they're kind of telling these letters in the form of like weird technological, natural kind of ways to each other, like in Fibonacci numbers on the spirals of plants and weird stuff. But you essentially read these letters backwards and forwards between the two characters as they fall in love with each other, but also deal with the time war, and it's messy because time travel, anything is messy, and the world building is like both amazing but might seem patchy. Like, you've kind of got to take a lot of it just at face value and accept that that's just how it is. If you were the kind of person that needs a really strict, it's not a magical system, it's not really a magical system per se, but like the science system. Bye. I'm gonna kick you out in a second. You would if you prefer a really strict world building system and rules and things, you might not like this. It's very like sciencey while also leap of faithy, and I really enjoyed it. This was amazing. I got sent this from LGBTQ plus reads, and because I have a monthly subscription with them, and they send me a personalized recommendation every month, and I am so glad I got this because I loved it to pieces. It was amazing. If you keep doing this, I'm gonna have to kick you out, yeah? Then I read 3, which is a really short chapter sampler teaser that came as a pre-order campaign for Dark Dawn, and this is literally just like a rewrite of a couple of chapters for Smut. It was amazing, but I mean, if you are not interested in Nevernight or haven't read them, don't care, don't bother. Like, it's really just fan service, but someone's mad I looked her out. It was just a fun time. We're gonna be dealing with that noise all video because she's not gonna shut up. She keeps doing that, she's gonna get detention. The next book I attempted was a DNF, and that was Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James. This was on my 5-star predicts, and then like a month after I put it in that video, I heard a lot of people's reviews on it and a lot of people DNFing it, and I was like, damn, because I think I'm going to agree with you. So I DNF'd this like 25 pages in, and it's for a couple of reasons. A lot of people said overall it was super dense and took a long time to get anywhere, and they didn't feel like the payoff was worth it. So a lot of people who even finished this really struggled with it. So that put me, and I in such a slump. I was defensive from the start. Like, if I'm not enjoying it, I'm not going to keep going. And then in what I did read, it was a combination of more grimdark than I'm prepared to go, and I enjoy grimdark, but this was super grimdark and way more grimdark than I was prepared to go. And also I felt so confused. I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't understand what we were trying to set up. I was just like, things are happening and they're happening, and that's all I know about it. So I quickly just gave up. I wasn't invested. I didn't feel connected. I gave it like a couple of chapters. I was coming at it very defensively, so if you're still interested in this, don't take my DNF too seriously, because I was emotionally prepared to DNF it before I ever started, and in fact, if it wasn't in my 5-star predicts video, I probably would have unhauled it without ever even having tried it. but because it was in that video, I thought I better at least give it a brief attempt. But it was exactly what I expected it to be based on other people's reviews to grimdark for people who even like grimdark, and just not what people expected. So I DNF'd this pretty early on. I'm just gonna go straight in my own haul pile, even though this cover is stunning. Then, because I felt like I needed to get my mojo going, I read Heavy Vinyl by a bunch of people. This is a graphic novel. I realized I didn't do the authors for Backstages either, so you're not getting them for this one. This is a girl group, a kick-ass girl group. They all run a, they work at a vinyl store, and it's set in the 90s, and it features a lot of bands and 90s music culture. I really enjoyed this. I'm pretty sure this is only volume 1 of a series, but I can't see the actual volume 1 bit anywhere. But if I see another one of these come out, I'm definitely going to pick it up because it was a fun time. Okay, she's been locked out. Hopefully filming will run a little bit smoother now. She's been put in detention. At this point in the month, I had another DNF, and this was an audiobook, The Beauty of the Moment by Tanaz Bettina. This one's a little bit different from the other DNF because honestly, I think I could enjoy this, but I think it was a combination of wrong format and wrong time. Obviously, I'd already been in a slump at this point, so I was really struggling with things. I was really busy, wasn't finding much time to read. By the time I DNF'd this, I was about 60% through and had spent almost 3 weeks listening to this audiobook. And normally I'm like an audiobook a week kind of person. So this was 100% dragging for me. I wasn't finding the time to prioritize it. I wasn't feeling like listening to it. I would rather have watched random YouTube videos than listen to it, and it just kind of got to the point where I was not feeling motivated and I needed to switch it up, and a different audiobook was going to go way better for me. So I ended up dropping it and picking up something else. The other problem I had was the format. I think the audiobook narrator, both narrators had lovely voices, but so lovely they put me to sleep. I just found them so rhythmic and melodic that I had a hard time focusing on what they were saying, which meant I wasn't getting the point of the story. So I think if I tried this in physical format, I would enjoy it a lot more. But alas, this be how it is sometimes. And I probably won't pick it up again, only because I have so much other stuff to read, but I totally recommend you try it on physical book. Or even audiobook if that works for you, but maybe try out the narrators first, like in a trial. This is essentially a YA romance following a girl called Susan, I believe, who has moved from Iran to Canada, and is dealing with immigrant issues, as well as like dealing with her family environment, where her dad's kind of left them and gone back to where they were previously living, and leaving her and her mum alone in Canada. So I was enjoying it in theory, but I really struggled to remain invested, so I DNF'd it. Then I read Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This is a thriller mystery, I guess. I got it from the library, so I will be returning it ASAP. I enjoyed this. There were some things I didn't like, and there were other things I really loved. I didn't like the main character. I thought she was very cookie cutter and didn't have many complexities. I thought she was very meh. So I absolutely did not like her in the slightest, but the mystery was really good, except I think it had some pacing issues. By that I mean I was waiting for the reveal or the jump scare or something to happen for the first half of the book, and the suspense was amazing, but it started getting to the point where it kept not happening, so the anticipation kind of wore off a little because nothing was happening. And then everything kind of happened all at once right at the end. So I really enjoyed like the first half. I didn't enjoy the next like quarter, and then I really enjoyed the ending again, but I hated the main character the whole way through. So mixed bag on this one. Not sure about my overall feelings, but I would probably pick up more from Riley Sager in the future, and I definitely want to read more thrillers and this type of thriller, because I've read a lot of like crime thrillers, like crime, mystery, thriller kind of things, but they're more like procedurals and less of this more suspensey kind of ones, and I want to get into them. Then the audiobook I picked up after DNFing The Beauty of the Moment, I listened to Jack of Hearts and Other Parts by Elsie Rosen, and I loved this, slammed through it in like a week. This was so fun. Essentially it's about a main character, Jack, who's like a high school senior, but in like a rich fancy high school where they're all a little bit pretentious, and he's an out proud gay man, but in a minute, and he's writing a like sex advice column for his friend's online blog, which is like the school newspaper taken online except unofficial because she was kicked off the school newspaper. So he's writing this like column, sex advice column, but he starts receiving notes from a secret admirer that get creepier and creepier as the book progresses, and he's trying to deal with that stalkeriness as well as his sexuality and helping other students in his school. I loved this. Importantly, its own voices for the gay representation, which I think is somewhat rare in the YA community. A lot of people writing YA contemporary featuring gay characters, especially gay male characters, are women, and I think it really shows in that we have a lot of romanticized stories and not many about the kinds of common relationships between gay men that are not so romantic, if that makes sense, that are more focused on like brief connections, sexual connections, that thing. Not that they're not bad in any means, in fact they're probably very healthy and good and important, but they're often overlooked in YA contemporary. You don't see much of them, and I really liked that this was talked very healthily about that. Overall, I think it had a lot of really healthy messages, especially in the advice column component, and also it was hilariously funny. It felt like sitting at home with my two boyfriends. Like the comedy and humor was the right kind of thing, because they both men who are into men. So I just felt like something I was inherently familiar with, even if it's not my story, and it felt very refreshing, and I loved it, and would definitely read more from Elsie Rosen in the future. Then I read The $10,000 of January by Alex E. Harrow. This is an adult, maybe almost a young adult crossover book. It's definitely been sold to a couple of YA book boxes, but it's also been marketed as adult. I'm pretty sure it's adult. Urban fantasy, portal fantasy, kind of, I would say portal fantasy story. We follow our main character, January, who one day goes through a door briefly and then discovers the world of these doors that lead to other worlds. There's not 10,000 of them. It's a bit hyperbolic, but the title definitely plays into the story. I really enjoyed this. I think it reads to me, it had the same atmosphere and careful consideration as something like The Night Circus, but it's also more of a family saga, and it is also a story within a story. We follow both January's story and then a book she's reading that follows a boy and a girl that are kind of learning about these worlds, if that makes sense, or these doors. I loved this, but I don't think it's for everyone. If you really don't like stories within stories, you're not gonna like this. If you want heavy romance, I don't think this really has that. It's got a vague inklings of romance, but nothing heavy. And yeah, I do think sometimes the main character made immature decisions, but she's also young, so they were realistic even if they weren't well reasoned, in my opinion. But the writing style is absolutely stunning. The plot, I think, paced pretty well, and the characters I really enjoyed. There is, though, I should make you aware that there is some secondhand crass talk about race. Our main character isn't white, but she's not black either, or any other kind of, like, they call her a mixed race child. Other people call her a mixed race child, but it's not really clear a lot of the time what her mixed race is. But a lot of the characters, it's set in a specific time period where racism was rife, and it does reflect that without a lot of clear outward criticism, but it is criticized. 1901 it starts, so we're still dealing with a lot of race issues. It's set in America, so you're dealing with a lot of those kind of problems, and it is criticized, but maybe not as overtly as people might like, and it kind of starts less criticized and builds over the course of the novel. So if that's the kind of thing you don't ever want to see, maybe don't read this, I guess. Overall, I really enjoyed it. It's almost a kind of 5-star perfect read. I would, if I was still reading books, which I'm kind of not at the moment, I would give it like a 4.75, 4.85 kind of. It was almost perfect. Then I read another almost perfect book, and that is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is amazing. It's almost perfect for me. And again, I would give it like 4.75 stars. We follow Gideon, who is the, I guess, kind of taken up to be the cavalier to a necromancer called Harrowhawk. They come from the same planet. This is like a sci-fi lesbian necromancer. It's a sci-fi fantasy blend. And it definitely has like death magic and a very heavy focus on death magic, but also they're in space, so science fiction. I absolutely adored this. I don't think it's what I was expecting, especially with like the tagline of like lesbian necromancers in space. It's not the kind of necromancy or space that immediately comes to mind when you think of that. It's very sciencey and complicated, but also way slower paced because things aren't happening in big action sequences all the time. So some of my criticisms, which personally I don't mind a lot of these things, but I think also would have contributed to other people not really liking the book. I really enjoyed it. You definitely don't see a lot of the action. A lot of it happens off page, so that can slow down the pace if you're a person that really needs action to happen on page. It takes a long time for action to happen, full stop. It's also got a lot of character names and a lot of character interactions and world building, magic wise, that you kind of have to leap of faith on. It all makes sense by the end, but we're following from Gideon's perspective in like a limited third person, and Gideon doesn't know how a lot of things work and who a lot of people are, so we don't know who a lot of people are or how things work, and you kind of get revealed things as Gideon finds out about them, which might be a bit late for other people. You are definitely intentionally left in the dark for a lot of this book. Things I absolutely adored is that Gideon's narration is hilarious. Because it's science fiction fantasy, it has this weird way, it feels kind of medieval in its magic system and vibe, but then we have really modern references, like Gideon, if you see here, is wearing aviator shades. That kind of thing where you've got really modern references in a really like medieval setting, which I love. And Gideon's narration is just hilarious. I also personally really like the magic system, and I don't mind leap of faith style magic systems where the rules are a bit murky, and the ending destroyed me. So love that about this. Today actually the cover art for the second book got released, and I think it's coming out middle of next year. I am hype. And then the Contemporary-a-thon started, and I read 6 things for the Contemporary-a-thon. I wanted to read 7, but I was a little bit short. The first one I read was With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. I loved this. This follows Amani, who is a teen mum who really enjoys cooking and kind of wants to pursue that as a career but doesn't really know how to go about that, and is sweet and romantic and cute, and there's nothing dodgy in here. Like, there's no like unnecessary conflict or unhealthy relationships. It's really wholesome and healthy, and I loved it so much. It was just so good, and Elizabeth Acevedo's writing is stunning and exquisite, and ironically, chef's kiss. This completed the challenges for a diverse contemporary and also a hard-hitting contemporary, obviously, because she's a teen mum dealing with issues. Then I listened to the audiobook of Well Met by Jen DeLuca. This is an adult, or new adult, I guess, romance featuring a Renaissance fair, and it's kind of like an enemies to lovers romance because they don't hit it off well outside of the Ren Fair. They're butt heads a little bit, and then in the Ren Fair they get along really well, and there's lots of chemistry there. It's maybe slow burn, but I don't read enough to know what classifies as slow burn in the genre. But it is a little bit smutty, but just a touch, and it was really cute. And there's no, I would argue there's no miscommunication. There's like, I'm telling you my feelings and then, okay, I'll go take those and process it kind of thing. But I thought the communication was actually really well handled, and they all did some solid talking in this book. I really loved it. It was so cute and fun, and this is the kind of adult romance I would love to read if you have more recommendations like this one. Then I read an ebook of Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, which is a graphic novel following an intentionally unhealthy relationship, which I think gets some people because it's very messy and not good. That's kind of the point. We're exploring how to get out of a not good situation. So we follow Freddie, who is dating Laura Dean, and Laura Dean is pretty terrible as a girlfriend and keeps breaking up with Freddie over and over again. And Freddie's like, ma'am, I'm sick of it, but also keeps coming back every time Laura Dean's like, Freddie, come be with me. She's like, yes, of course, Freddie, I'm here. Of course, Laura, I'm here. And it's really dealing with how to overcome that toxicity. And I loved it. The art style is beautiful, the message is beautiful, and I just had a great time. This does feature pregnancy and abortion. If that's something that is a problem for you, there is that included. That one completed the challenge of a book with plants on the cover. Then I read Technically You Started It by Lana Wood Johnson. This completed the challenge for a book with an illustrated cover, and this is a book told in text message format between a girl and a guy that she's demisexual, I think he's bi, both on page, and it was really cute, but I don't think it's for everyone because it definitely features a like grey calm, like it's miscommunication, but I think innocently intended and wasn't ever malicious. So I personally was alright with it because there wasn't malicious intent ever, and I think so essentially what happens is that Haley, girl, texts Martin, the guy, but there's two Martins with the same name, and she is like, which one are you? And he's like, the good one. But in her head, which one she thinks is the good one is not the one that he is. And he realizes probably maybe a third of the way into the book that she's got her messages tied, like her wires crossed, and she's thinking he's the other Martin. And he keeps trying to tell her, but she's not really picking up on the messages he's putting out. He doesn't quite know how to just lay it out in the open. And he makes quite a few attempts that you can see where he's like, he was waiting for her to like be like, what do you mean? So he could go, I'm actually the other Martin, but she wasn't picking up what he was putting down. So he was trying really hard, well, not really hard. I feel like he could have just gone, Haley, you've got the wrong guy. But I think for high schoolers, he was trying to communicate with her in his own not perfect way. But they were really sweet together. I liked the way it built a demisexual like a relationship between the two of them, considering she's demisexual like I am, and I thought it was a really natural build and progression for their friendship and relationship, and it just worked really well. But if you do not like miscommunication in that regard, I would steer clear. And another thing I know a lot of people struggle with in this is that obviously because it's all in text, you don't see things happening, you see their responses to it, which I found fine, but some people might struggle with. Oh, I don't think I said, Well Met filled the challenge for a community recommendation, which was from Mel to the Annie. For the challenge to read a 2019 release, I read Hungry Hearts, edited by Elsie Chapman and Caroline Tung Richmond. This is a anthology of a mix of stories. Some of them are contemporary, some of them are more like magical realism. I really enjoyed this. I was actually surprised by the range of styles, voices, and weird things that were in this. I really enjoyed almost every story. Some of them blew my mind, and overall I thought it was a great anthology focusing around food and was not at all what I expected. And then finally for this month, and fulfilling the prompt Something with Yellow on the cover, I read Tell Me How You Really Feel by Amina May Safi, which is a female-female romance between Sana and Rachel. And Rachel is a filmmaker who has dealt a lot with she's got a lot of aggression issues because of a complex family environment, and she's used to being the underdog, so she's very bitter. And then Sana is a cheerleader dealing with some issues regarding where to go after high school. And honestly, I really enjoyed this, and I think my favorite part actually is the growth the two characters took from the start of the book to the end. Rachel learns to like give people a chance and not one-dimensionalize other people. She's a filmmaker, so she thinks she's good at reading people, but in fact I think she's probably not, and she kind of develops that across the course of the novel. And then Sana learns how to prioritize herself and her desires within her life, I guess, and how to look to what she actually wants. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was sweet. I do think some of the conflicts, especially at the start, a lot of it is just the characters bringing their own prior biases into a discussion, which some people have said the fights like come out of nowhere, but I think they don't. They come out of the characters' previous biases, but you have to kind of be paying attention to get how that clicks in. And I personally really enjoyed this. Rachel is Jewish Mexican and Sana is Indian Iranian? Indian Persian. And I think the representation was really good there, I think, though I don't have any experience to know for sure. But I thought the female representation was really well handled. Like the women love and women stuff was well handled, and I overall really enjoyed it. So those are all the books that I read in the month of September. Overall I enjoyed a lot of what I read other than the DNFs, but I feel like I didn't read as much as I wanted to, and there were a lot of things I wanted to get to that I never got a chance to get to. But overall I had a fun time. I feel like I'm back in a reading mood, so hopefully October goes a lot better. But otherwise I'll see you soon with a new video, and thank you so much for watching. Comment down below what you read in September or link me to a video. Bye!